So if you think you're perfect, it's because your island of goodness is really small. But that's scary. I don't want to go any further there. Why did the Big Bang go bang? Great question. And I can only give a theological answer. Because God wanted there to be a universe that would have in it the awareness to be able to choose to love or not love God. Because God is love, God loves love, and God loves to create the possibility of love. How's that for it's not a scientific answer at all. If it's the logical universe, the logical God, then what's miracles? Really important question. The nature of miracles. Most people nowadays have bought into the Enlightenment idea. The Enlightenment, you're familiar with the Enlightenment, you've got the scientific revolution, and then within 100 years, people are writing encyclopedias that are going to have all of knowledge, and the Enlightenment has all of these marvelous new ways to get rid of Christianity, get rid of philosophy. The Enlightenment was the adolescence of human thought, where people dreamt up every stupid idea possible and thought, this is so cool, it must be true. So, one of the Enlightenment ideas was if there was a God, he just made a universe that was, winded up and then it runs by itself. We know the universe doesn't run by itself. We know the universe is filled with events that we cannot describe any better than as by chance. We know it's not a mechanical universe. We also know it's a universe that's full of love and full of beauty and full of all the other things that you cannot weigh and measure. And it's a universe full of intelligence. What is it? If I write a note to you that has an intelligent message, except I wrote it in Chinese, and you've never seen Chinese, then the intelligence is lost. But the intelligence is still there. It still exists. But it only exists if someone who understands it. It only exists if there is an intelligent person to understand the intelligence. Information depends on somebody reading it. Because otherwise it's indistinguishable from noise. One of the problems people are having with the search for extraterrestrial intelligence now is they're hoping that they could tell radio signals. Most of the radio signals, even now, they are surrounded, the things that come into your cell phone, they're digital. And they have a digital signal digitally encoded so that your phone rings and his doesn't. But from the outside, if you don't have the code, it looks exactly like noise. You cannot tell the difference without knowing the code between a cell phone and a piece of noise. So if they're, and that's this week's technology. Who knows how intelligent creatures might be communicating 100 years from now. The point is that, what was the point? Oh, miracles. What's a miracle? A miracle, everybody thinks now, is a violation of the laws of physics. We had miracles before we had laws of physics. So a miracle can't be defined as the violation of the law of physics. What's one of the miracles, the famous one that everybody knows, the rainbow? Well, I know how a rainbow works. It's refraction of light through droplets, and I can write down the equations. Does that mean it's not a miracle? It still is a miracle, even though there's no violation of laws of physics. A miracle is an unusual sign that directs us to God. That could be a wildly unlikely but not impossible coincidence. What one of my spiritual directors was referred to as a divine coincidence. And it's a miracle if it wakes me up out of my complacency and says, oh, God is present here. And if it just wakes me up but it has nothing to do with God, it's not a miracle. And if it wakes me up, but it's sometimes the things that wake you up are things that happen all the time. The difficulty with that other definition of miracle is the physicist will say, it's impossible, therefore miracles can't exist. Or if it did exist, there must be a scientific reason behind it. Therefore it's not God. Either way, they've decided ahead of time they're not going to believe, and they will cook the result to match their assumption. which is all the same we do. Instead, miracles can be the little things that happen all the time that we take for granted until someday we're aware of the fact. You know, if you're married and you wake up in the morning and realize this other person is still here, in spite of everything, that's a miracle. I heard this story when I was, a few years ago, my parents were living in Michigan at the time. And their family up the road had their children, their adult children, home for Christmas. And they've got these beautiful glass walls overlooking Lake Huron. The sun rises over the lake. And at Christmas time, of course, it's about 8 in the morning when it rises, and it's really beautiful. So Grandma's got the 3-year-old, and she goes, "Come look at this." And he watches the sunrise. And it's gorgeous. So it was really kind of cool. You get to show that to your grandkid. Next day, Grandma's in the kitchen making breakfast. Here's this shout, "Grandma, Grandma, come quick! It's doing it again!" That's a miracle. That's a miracle. Another, what is outside creation? I failed to answer that the last time. Creation of the universe, evolution of life. Is the creator, how did he create? And what's the role of evolution in creation? The soundbite answer is, I believe God created the universe. I believe my science tells me how he did it. And you will find echoes of our ideas of evolution every Ash Wednesday when you're told you are from dust, you came from dust, and unto dust you will return. What does it mean we came from dust? It means the inanimate ingredients of our life were there before we were alive. It means that God took a world that didn't have life and made life appear. Isn't that all that evolution is saying? You'll find ideas of evolution in St. Augustine. There's nothing anti-Christian about it. The problem with evolution came up not because the scientists are saying this is how things move from one to the other. If you believed in the pagan god of the gaps, I only believe in God because it explains the things I can't explain otherwise, and then somebody says, well, this is actually how it happened. Well, that was a god you shouldn't be believing in the first place, the god of the gaps. And the evolution theory removed one of those gaps. But the real problem with evolution was not the science, but the way that people abused the science. Now, in spite of my Italian name, my mother was Patricia Claire Duffy, so I can tell this half of the story. There were people in America who didn't like the Irish. Never happens anywhere else, but it happened in America. And the powers that be who wanted to make sure that immigrants didn't come to America, because immigrants were ruining the place. There's people with vowels at the end of their name, like Consolmagno, got to keep them out. Said, well, we know from evolution we can explain why the Irish are so stupid. It's because all the smart Irish men become priests. So it's only the dumb ones who have kids. Obviously, they've never met many Irish priests. When people started using evolution as an excuse for their racist beliefs, for their internal biases, then that's the problem. When people started using evolution even worse as an excuse for eugenics, well, we all saw where eugenics led. But they didn't know that in 1900, or they wouldn't have believed that it would end up that way, you know, in the death camps of Nazi Germany. You read people like H.G. Wells, the wonderful prophet of science. Electricity and steam engines are going to solve all of our problems. Maybe. Even he had a universe that was more complicated than that. But that sort of 19th century idea that science was going to solve everything and make religion obsolete. The church wasn't too happy about that, for among other things. It led to a lot of really bad beliefs. Eugenics was probably the worst in the Nazis. There's a famous story of the Scopes trial in America, where the fellow back in that horribly backward South was arrested for teaching evolution out of a biology book. A fellow who was an atheist, actually, Stephen Jay Gould, wrote a book on the history of science and religion issues, which he tried to be sympathetic. I don't think he really got it all right. But he does point out something I'd never seen. You actually look at the textbook that Scopes was using, and it uses evolution as a way of explaining why black people were supposed to be inferior to white people, because it was all an evolution. If I'm rich and you're poor, it's clearly because I am inherently superior. Chance couldn't possibly have had anything to do with it. And therefore, not only do I not have to feel bad about you being poor, I should not waste my time trying to improve you, because it's hopeless. It's against the laws of physics. And even more, since I'm superior and all you other guys are inferior, I should be the one who gets to have, lots of babies with only the best of the girls whom I get to choose. Horrible ideas. Absolutely. And this was the abuse of evolution that got so many people upset with the theory. And I think it's right to object to that. People will sometimes ask me, if the church, why is the church against some cell research if they're not against science? It's not that they don't think the physics and the biology works that way. It's that they think maybe this is a bad idea for other reasons that you haven't thought of. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we really need to do something. If the universe is logical, why Donald Trump? I rest my case. This one is really deep, and I could talk for an hour. Fact versus truth, compare and contrast. The one is the piece of data, the other is the understanding that we hope matches a deeper understanding of how the universe works. And the same facts can be understood in different systems to tell us different things. Sometimes to mislead us to believe the things we want to believe. Most of you probably know about numbers that are even and odd, yeah? And most of you may have learned what a prime number is. Anybody here doesn't know what a prime number is? Yeah, right. So if you can divide it by two other numbers besides itself and 1, then it's not a prime. So 5. The only numbers you can go into 5 are 1 and 5. It's a prime number. And the old joke goes, all odd numbers are prime. Did you know that? Because the 3 is prime, 5 is prime, 7 is prime, 9, experimental error, 11 is prime. Sometimes it is experimental error. Sometimes you do get, the machine misfunctioning. And how you know when to throw away the data as being experimental error and when to say, no, this is really significant, is one of the reasons why science can't be done by computers. One of the sayings in science is, one man's noise is another man's signal. And the very thing that you're going to toss away because that's not what I'm interested in might be the very thing that she's actually working on and needs to know about. Classic example of this. 2 guys working in the 1920s at Bell Labs were getting weird signals when they were shooting neutrons into a crystal, or X-rays, and neutrons into the crystal and electrons, and they were not bouncing out the way that they expected. They're trying to figure out the structure of the crystal. So they just wrote up their results, and one guy says, the heck with this. It's been my 25th anniversary. I'm going to go on vacation with my wife. And he came to England, and he did 3 weeks traveling around England. And after the 3rd week, he's getting bored, and they're in Oxford, and he sees that there's somebody he knows giving a seminar. Yes, his wife lets him go. He goes to the seminar and finds the guy at the seminar using his results to prove that electrons have a waveform. which eventually got all of them, 3 of them, him and his buddy and this other guy, the Nobel Prize. He had no idea that that's what the result meant. But he was careful enough about recording all of it, not just the part that he was looking for. The first set were the facts, the second part was the truth. Do we get involved in lots of projects like, for instance, the Square Kilometer Array? What about the Vatican Museum? And what are we doing in the field of cosmology? All really good questions and closer tied together than you might think. The Square Kilometer Array is this idea of a series of radio telescopes that in total will have an area the size of a square kilometer but spread out over a large area. And there's lots of reasons why you want to do that. We aren't involved in that particular project only because there's nobody in our group who does that kind of science. But we have friends who do. And we keep track of that and we encourage them. The very first thing the Vatican Observatory ever did in 1891, one of the reasons at that moment the Pope wanted to have an observatory was because it was only at that moment that people started thinking science and religion were opposed, mostly for the politics of the late 19th century. But also the politics was that the Vatican wanted to be recognized by other nations as an independent nation. Remember that Italy had just been unified, and there was only this little area around St. Peter's that the Vatican still maintained was theirs. And somebody suggested, what do nations have? Their own postage stamps, so they have their own stamps. Their own coins, they have their own coins. Their own national observatory could do 2 of these things. Show the world that the church supports science, and at that very moment in France was a program to have identical telescopes around the world, each of them photographing a different part of the sky, and out of this we'd have the first photographed atlas of the stars. And the Vatican shows up, says, we've got the money to buy one of these telescopes, give us a chunk of the sky. And they got a chunk. And they were de facto recognized as different from and independent of the Italian National Observatory, which got a different chunk of the sky. So we've been involved in these big projects in the past. I'm the new director of the observatory. We've got a telescope in Arizona, you saw the film, which is a lovely telescope, 25 years old. Telescopes generally have a lifetime of about 50 years. So it's got a great future ahead of it, but in the meanwhile,